Hello everybody, Andre here. Hello. I think you can hear me. I was having trouble with OBS. It got stuck, but we should be live. Please confirm you can hear me, and can you see something different today? Maybe the camera looks a little bit better. Hello, that is Art. It's good to see you. And so I'm just gonna wait 1 second for you guys to confirm that everything is good on your end, and then we'll get started. So maybe that is Art. Maybe you could tell me if you can see and hear me all right. Because OBS just decided to stop working for a second, but it should all be good now. All right, cool. So you can, great, thanks. So you can see, maybe you can see a bit of difference with the camera today because I'm using my iPhone's camera and it looks like 1,000 times better than the previous one. And now I can actually do double cameras and maybe some interesting stuff. Not today though, but when we do guitar things, I might be able to set it up if I can work it out. All right, for those of you who are new, welcome to our weekly Saturday live stream. Every Saturday at 6:30 p.m. Central European Time, we get together and we talk about music. Usually I teach a little something about guitar, theory, technique, all that kind of stuff, production. And sometimes we just talk about stuff that is useful to musicians in general, like today, which is going to be about home studio essentials, which basically is my little guide to what you really truly need for your home studio, what you can do without, and where you should spend money and where you could save some money. And of course, this is just an opinion, but I've been doing this for a long time. I've had the studios, and I made a lot of mistakes, and I think I learned from them, so maybe I can share it with you. Today, please do use the chat room. Use the chat to let me know your questions and you have any doubts. If you have any issues with gear and you don't really know what to do with a certain piece of gear, please let me know because it's one good way of helping you out. All right. And if you're new, please do subscribe. Hit the bell. Not just because that way you won't miss it when we're live, but also because it will help the channel a lot. So that would be very much appreciated. And hello, Indrajit. Good to see you. Hello. Your internet is spotty, so I'll be off and on again. Well, that is we'll be here. So, and as always, this will be up on YouTube. As soon as we're done, it will be up and available. So feel free to, to check it out later and maybe go into more detail. I hope on my end, everything works. Yesterday, we had an issue with the internet. The whole thing went down. Called the company and they fixed it really well and really quickly. So hopefully we won't be hit with that. I tested everything works. So hello Indrajit, hello Carlos. Hi there, I hope I'll be creating my home studio. Yes, Carlos is writing from, what was it, Sweden? Norway, one of the two. And Indrajit had an insane month. Yeah, we haven't seen you in a while. So it's good to see you, Indrajit. And then Juan Pablo, hello Juan Pablo. With the frog. And yes, it's good to have you back, Indrajit. And you're like a minute. Okay, you just hit live and then you can go back and watch it. But anyway, so before we begin, as always, I'm going to give you a little rundown of my week, and I think you'll find this kind of funny. You remember last week I said that I got into those reel-to-reel things, and so I was scouring. I was going through eBay and Wallapop, which is an app here that you can buy secondhand gear. And it certainly has to do with studio, so it's on topic this time. Not like when I show you my, the chestnut cakes and all that stuff. But this is what I got for almost nothing. Well, not almost nothing, but a really good price. But, the photos didn't look like this at all. So I got the package. It was packed, crappily packed. It was terrible. Got here, the reels were broken, and it's full of, look at all the crap. And I told the guy, like, man, where were you storing this? And he's like, no, nowhere strange. It was totally normal. Well, it looks like shit, but, and check this out. I mean, look at this. You have a Revox reel-to-reel. This reel-to-reel was made by Studer. Studer are the top of the line reel-to-reel players and recorders. But so that guy had it there. I don't know why. What a tool. But anyway. I got to it, I started cleaning and cleaning and cleaning. You see, it looks a bit better now, but this was like 2 hours in and I had at least 2 or 3 more hours to go. And now it looks like this. You see, so now it looks like a pro thing, right? The problem is the counter doesn't work. The two lights come on and off, and so there's something wrong there. And also the rewind is not as good as it could be. So I think I'm gonna bring it to I'm gonna take it to a tech, and I have to pay a bit of money for it, but you know, that way it will work properly. And I really want to use it with my synthesizers, which are here. You know, you're never able to see them, but I'll show you one day. And so I'm gonna use this again to do a lot of synthesizers recording on 2 tracks. So basically I have all the synths and the drum machines going at once, like a live performance, and record it onto 2 track. And this sounds incredible, but the problem is, you know, I'm a guitar player, so I have to figure out exactly how I'm gonna do the music on the synths, which I know how to use, of course, but you know, it's a whole different process. And then I have to figure out how to work the machine, get it working. But you know, but it turns on, everything works. It's fine. It's a great machine. It's a piece of history. It's back there. I don't know if you can see it right behind me. Wait, this is all backwards. Yeah, there you go. But you know, it will be working great in no time. All right. So do you guys notice the camera is a lot better, or is it just on my end? Because to me, it's night and day here with the iPhone. But I don't know if it's worth the trouble. So let me know if you can see me better. And more clarity. There should be more resolution as well. And let's get started. All right, so how many of you have a home studio or want to build a home studio? And if you're happy with your home studio, if you're not happy with your home studio, and if you have any questions, get going with the questions in the chat, because there's a delay, and so it's much easier if you just type your questions as we go along, all right? But I thought I would just go pretty much in order and give you a few tips on each part of the home studio, and then you can also ask questions about each one. All right, so the first thing, which is usually, I would like to ask, if it was in real time, I would ask you, what is the most important thing in a studio? And some people say the interface, some people say your instruments, some people say you know, all that kind of stuff. But really the most important thing is the room. The room is the most important thing, because first of all, if you don't have a room, you don't have a studio, but also because you can have a lot of equipment and not really know how it works and how it sounds unless you have a proper room. And so we're not going to get into a lot of detail about the room, but I'm going to give you a couple of tips. So first of all, find something or somewhere where you can work by yourself. You know, even more important than the sound of the room is that you can just go there and work and do your thing. So a separate room would be best, or if you have a big living room, like some people in America, sometimes there's like this 2 or 3 areas in one living room, so you can maybe steal one for yourself, but you know, somewhere isolated so you don't get interrupted. Because when you start doing studio work, especially the production thing, mixing and so on, it's really bad to get interrupted. So that's one thing. The other thing is the shape of the room, and I won't go into a lot of detail. I would just say that you should avoid rooms that have equal sides and heights. So for example, the worst thing is a cube, right? If you're in a cube, that's not a good thing. So if you have the luxury of being able to pick a room, then you know, pick the one that's not a cube, all right? And also, if you have a taller ceiling, that's better. And that's it. Also, you can get into a bit more detail. If you have one dimension that is not one dimension that is like double or triple another dimension, that's almost as bad as having the same dimension. So that's something you want to take care of. If you can't really take care of all that, you can adjust the room by, for example, putting some things up, right? So you can put a big book library, like a bookcase in the, what do you call that? I had a long day. I was trying to fix that thing. But anyway, you know, that you can put it in the back of the room. Maybe you gain half a meter like that, and then you fill it with books. It will make for a great diffuser. So you can be creative. You can maybe have a big sofa on one side and some other stuff on the other, you know, kind of to break the symmetry. A bookshelf, that's good. Thanks, Indrajit. And that helps a lot. And so one thing is that now we are not all able to do it. Okay, so basically work in the room you got. Windows and stuff, I wouldn't worry too much about it. And there's one other thing that we should take into account, which is that as long as you don't play the speakers too loud, then the room is not that important. Okay, so that's something that's always ignored. But Indraji, you say you got a square room and you go direct. Yes, but maybe this will help you. If you mix at a conversation level, that's anyway what you should mix at. So this kind of level, then the room doesn't really have the energy of sound to interact with the sound too much. As a matter of fact, you're probably, by putting a little bit of foam here and there, you'll be able to control it very, very much. So even if you have a shitty room with a lot of windows and you don't know where the windows should go, don't worry about it. Just mix at lower volumes. And the other thing is, if you can afford to, space-wise, don't put your desk right against the wall. All right, leave a bit of room, and there's measures for this. This is beyond today's video, but you might want to just get back a little bit from the wall. All right, so that will also, that with the reduced volume, it will also help you minimize the reflections from that wall in front of you, and also the bass content will be a bit more tamed. All right, so the room is basically, if you can, in this order, right? So a quiet room where you can be by yourself, and then slowly you can go like, okay, what shape is it? Can I afford to pick one over the other? Yes, great. No, well, I work within that confine. Then you can, if you can pick a room that's not a cube, then make sure you adjust it so that no dimensions are double or triple any other dimension. Now, is it 100% you have to do it? No, but it will help. It will help reduce how much treatment you have to make. And then the biggest thing is mix at lower volumes. That way you'll be fine. But we'll talk about monitors and headphones later. And one more thing that people are very curious about is treatment, acoustic treatment. Now, that has nothing to do with being soundproof. Okay, being soundproof is a construction thing. So you can put all the foam you want and you'll still bother your neighbors. All right, I'm sure you all know this, but if you're new to this, that's a big, big mistake. Don't go out and buy a lot of foam just because you don't want to bother your neighbors. You will anyway. But the foam will help you have a better sound inside the studio. So, okay, well, I don't want to touch the camera because it's the first day I'm using it, but you see that black thing up there, which you've seen my studio around here. I have all these huge bass traps. Now, those bass traps are handmade, and because it's very expensive and I didn't like the colors, but if you have a small room, you can just place bass traps at a few spots. All right, and the other thing you can do is put some foam just around your listening position. So on this side, and above you, if you can. And that's pretty much it, right? And then maybe put a sofa in the room and some bookshelves, and you're done. You're done, as long as you don't monitor at very high volumes. But if it's a home studio, truly a home studio, you probably don't have a soundproof room, so you can't make a lot of noise. All right, so don't spend a lot of money on foam and all this stuff. You can build your own panels, or you can buy them. One thing I would suggest is don't go with the very tiny panels, the 2.5 or 5 centimeter. Go for the 10, or maybe if you find them cheap, buy 2 sets of 5 and put one above the other, because that will go lower in the frequencies, and it will do a lot more than just the thin ones. The thin ones will suck all the high frequency energy out of the room, and you will be left with a dark, dull sounding room, and it will confuse you. It will make you boost all the highs everywhere, and then it will sound like crap when you get out there. All right, so that's important. And the final thing is these panels, if you can separate them from the walls, just a little bit. So for example, you have an 8 centimeter panel, here's the wall, here's the panel. If you can, don't stick it to the wall, just leave a bit of room, yeah? And that air will also help a lot with the bass. So that's it. And for most home studios, I see a lot of people, and especially stores, you go to the store and they suggest you buy all this treatment, but you don't need a lot of treatment. You can do too much of it, and also you have to know how to use it. And if you don't, you're better off just mixing in low volumes, put some stuff, a sofa, something, and that will help. All right, and then if you buy some, go bit by bit. Don't buy 1,000 square feet of foam, because then you'll cover up the whole room and it will sound like crap. It will just sound dead, and that's no fun either. So take it easy with the foam, take it easy with the treatment, mix at a low volume, and then maybe what you could do is try to visit a few studios. Some of them you can just go and ask for information, and you go, could I see the studio? And you can walk in and get a sense of what the room sound like, the control room, as you walk in. It's helped me a lot through the years that I've worked in studios for a long time. And every time I go to a studio, I kind of walk into the room, clap my hands, and then when I'm talking to the engineer, I always keep in mind, that sound. And then when I get back here, I compare and see if there's anything I need to do. But this room is pretty sound, actually. So And you see at the back, I have barely any treatment. There's that diffuser, and then the absorption starts basically on this side and all that way. All right, so take it easy with the foam. That's all I'm saying. Okay, the Desire says, I have enough room here. A third of what is showing on your camera, but I have less equipment. Yes. Oh, actually, a big room is always better, right? Because it minimizes the energy. But yeah, a third of this is fine. This is smaller than it looks, by the way. Hello, Jim. Welcome. I only use enough space for 2 guitars, shelving on my laptop, small monitors, and digital keyboard. Still have enough room to move quite freely. All right, yeah, that's good. So comfort is key, right? But if you can, a bigger room will help too. Now, if you record, then it's a different thing. But we're talking about most people, we're going to talk about recording today, but a lot of you probably are not recording with microphones, preamps, and all that stuff. If you are, you might need a separate area because a small room, it's a bit more problematic for recording, but we'll get into it. All right, so next thing, of course, instruments, right? By the way, I'm moving on, but you can ask any questions you want. We'll get back to any subject, don't worry about it. If you're new here, we're a pretty relaxed bunch, so there's no discipline, not at all, so ask away. And let's see, oh wait, Indrajit, my room looks square. Yeah, no, it's not square. My room is actually almost twice as long as it is wide, because there's a lot you're not seeing, because I have my desk, and then there's about 1.5 meters of space to the front wall. So it's actually longer than quite a bit, actually. And the only problem is that it's almost as high as it is wide. So I had a double ceiling here, and also I put some foam. And then the bass straps are kind of lowering, at least at the corners. By the way, bass straps should go in the corners, wall to wall, wall to ceiling, or wall to floor, although that eats up a lot of room. All right? Yeah. So instruments. Why am I talking about instruments? Because again, it's never top of the list when I say what makes a studio. The room instruments. It doesn't matter how much gear you got, but your instruments should be well kept. I've received, I teach also production, and some students bring me their stuff, and also I do courses. And I see people, and sometimes people send me their demos just to listen to it. I don't know why, but my opinion sometimes they want to hear it. And a lot of times you just hear this. These instruments that are recorded, but they're recorded not poorly, but the instrument is in poor conditions. So if you have a guitar that's out of tune, it doesn't matter how good your microphone is and how good you are with your mixing skills, the guitar is out of tune. If you have a drum kit that's not tuned properly, or that one of the drums is dead, then the heads are dead, then you'll hear it. There's nothing you can do about it. If your microphones are not well kept, if your preamps are rusty and they make noise when they reach a certain level, or your compressors, that's a big thing. You don't have to have a lot of stuff, but the stuff you have, keep it in tip-top shape. All right, and I know it looks like I have a lot of guitars, and I do. There's a few more that you're not seeing, but they're always kept in great condition when I'm recording. When I'm playing live, I have my trusty two there, and it's a different thing. But when I start recording, I take them apart, build them again, everything goes out, and then I fine-tune them for recording. They're never perfect, guitars are never perfect, but I always keep them check. Also, I have a lot of gear, so if one of my amps doesn't work, I can switch to another. I have my Kemper, but if in the beginning, I only had 1 amp and 1 guitar. Power Fantastic was made with 1 guitar and 1 amp, and I had to make sure that everything was working properly, because if you have a crap sound coming in, there's nothing you can do. All right, so not only have enough instruments, but keep them in good shape. Now, as far as physical instruments, I don't know what you guys have, but my suggestion is you should have at least 2 guitars if you're into guitar music. And the reason is that you will want a couple of different sounds. And it's true that to me, I find it hard to, once you're recording something, I find it hard to recognize like a Les Paul from even to an SG. I know they sound different, but once they're recorded, they're in a track, they're in a song. Even with my Parkers, sometimes I have a hard time. I'm like, well, did I use my Parker on this song or the 335? So there is a difference. And if I listen carefully, I can hear it, but it's not a huge thing. So if you only have 2 instruments, I would say go for the big families first. So I would go for a humbucker guitar, like a Les Paul, or anything with the humbucker you like, and then a Strat sound. Those two are maybe the first ones I would get. And then I would probably get something like a Tele, and then I would get something like, that's the reason I got my Dan Electro. It's a very different sound. But slowly you work your way down the list of big families, like a P90, a PAF, a modern sounding guitar, a classic single coil, and then you can expand within that, right? I make instrumental music. If you guys don't know, I only do instrumental music. Well, my music is instrumental, and I need all these colors. Now, if you don't need all the colors, you can probably get away with 1 or 2 guitars. Amplifiers is the same. You don't need those. You don't need those Marshalls, but maybe you need 1 Marshall first, or something like it, a more rock sound, and maybe you do need something a bit cleaner, maybe something like a Fender, or anything that's similar to that. It doesn't have to be a Fender, of course. It could be cheaper, but something that's like that. Then you can get into, okay, well, I have this Marshall, but the 800 sounds so different from the 2000. Let me get both of them, and I know how I'm going to use them, and keep them in shape. But really, be selective with what you buy. If you buy a drum kit, I'm not a drummer, but if you have a studio and you want to record something, well, can you make noise? Can you not? In my case, I have those because I can use them many different ways. Although I could have real drums in here, but when I record acoustic drums, I just go to a studio. Okay, there's so many microphones you need and preamps. It's just not worth it to buy all this stuff and record a record every 2 or 3 years. All right, so also that you should keep in mind. Now, a nice drum kit, an electronic drum kit, we use this for rehearsals. We can turn everything up and it sounds like a real rehearsal room, but the drums are electronic, but it's, they sound acoustic, but that's a good compromise. But so instruments, be selective, not like me, and keep them in good shape, all right? There is art. I like a synth keyboard that is more versatile using a Casio. A keyboard. Well, I don't. What kind of sounds are you after? I know a few things. If you want, one very good versatile synth is the Novation Peak. There's been stuff coming out after that, but it's a great synth for the price. It's a module, so you need a controller, but it's 8 voices, analog digital at the same time. There's like some things are digital, the filters are analog. And it's a really good synth. It's a really great synth, and it's not too expensive. Also, the Behringer stuff is not bad at all. The DeepMind 12 by Behringer, a lot cheaper too, and it's 12 voices, 100% analog. Look at that. And there's quite a few now. Synths are in a renaissance period now. It's like the new golden age of synths. I use very cheap guitars. Need to trade for 3 new, at least, slightly better guitars. But for now, well, you'll be surprised. Cheap guitars can be great. I've done a lot of things with cheap guitars, and a lot of people have made great records with cheap guitars. Like, yes, the Novation Peak, yeah. Like Van Halen's first guitars, I mean, everybody now is trying to copy it for $5,000, but really was a cheap, what was it called? The Boogie Buddies. They were just parts, and you probably paid $100 for a part and $100 for another, put it together, and there you go. I know the first Satriani records were all made with cheap guitars too, kind of like that. And he had to switch I think he had to switch from single coils to humbuckers between songs because he only had 1 guitar but 2 pickguards. So I don't think you need expensive guitars at all. But you do need, I think, those families. You need to be able to represent the classic, maybe the Strat thing and the Les Paul thing. In my case, if you do very modern stuff, then maybe you just need 1 guitar with really high output pickups, and that's it. Now those sound even more similar to me, the ones with a very high output. And I do hear all the differences. So my 335 has very different pickups from the Classic 57, which has very different pickups from my Parkers, but they're all PAF. So do you want to spend all that money in 3 guitars to have a slightly different PAF pickup? I want to now, but it wouldn't make sense before. What do you think of the preamp in inbuilt audio interfaces? Indraji, we're going to get to interfaces in a little while, so I'll answer your question then. And what was the Behringer one? It was the Behringer DeepMind 12. Let me write it down in the chat for you. I haven't played it, but I've heard it, and it's, you know, I'm into synths. I have Moog synths, I have some really cool synths, but the DeepMind is a great synth to begin with. Even if you're an expert, you know, it sounds really good. And the Novation Peak as well. All right, so that's my advice for instruments. And microphones. Now, this is going to be quick because I know most of you do not record with a microphone. I like to record my cabinets with microphones. So I set them up in the other room, and I have the cabinet here in my room. Then I have a setup that I can patch speaker cables to the other room and turn it up and put the microphones out there, come back with the mic cable and record. But I know a lot of you are not probably going to be doing that. Even then, and we're going to talk about that, right? How to record just in the next section. But even then, I would have one microphone in a studio. I wouldn't be without a microphone because you can do a lot of stuff just by sampling sounds into your computer. You can do simple things like a shaker or a tambourine or something that will add that dimension of live performance, and it's very important. And of course, if you have vocals, then you need a microphone. But even if you do instrumentals, I would always have a microphone. I'm going to show you a couple of things that I have. For those of you who don't know, there's two main types. There's many, but the main types that concern us now are dynamic microphones and condenser microphones. Dynamic microphones work because when you talk, the membrane moves and it's picked up by a magnet. Otherwise, it has to be picked up by a charged plate. So that's a condenser. But this is the most useful microphone you can ever get. Is the SM57. It's about $100, and you need one of these. You can record anything with these. They're great for guitars. They're great for everything. You can actually do vocals with these. Purists will kill me for it, but you can do all kinds of stuff with this microphone. So even if you only have one mic, make it this one, an SM57, and the new ones are just as good. You know, you can buy one. And of course, you can use a preamp, which we'll talk about later. But you can just plug it into your interface. They all have a preamp. As long as you have an XLR input, you're set, all right? So maybe just get this. For example, I recorded my sitar with this. I recorded all the hand claps, and I had recorded acoustic guitar with it. Of course, my cabinets are recorded with this. I record hitting the table and the desk with my hands and then process it into the computer and add it to a kick drum on Mystic Electric. All kinds of stuff, you know, and it's a great microphone. Now, similar to this, before we move on to condensers, this is a great mic, right? And it has a bit of a bump in the high mids, so it sounds very present. But this is another one that I really like. And for guitars, if you are a guitarist, I really enjoy this one. Okay, this is a Sennheiser 906. There's a 609, which is quite famous. Looks a bit different. This is the newer one, the 906. Sounds great. And the cool thing about it, you can hang it from the cabinet. So you have the cable and just hangs in front of the cabinet. And you can just move it where you want it. And you set it up, and that's it. Great microphone. A little bit more expensive. It's a little bit more expensive. Hello, Ray. Which one don't you have? The 57, you're crazy. Ray plays guitar. You need to have a 57. But yeah, this is a great one. If you are only talking about guitars, maybe this over the 57. But overall, and it's similar. It's a quite similar thing. It works also, this works very well for pretty much everything I said about the 57. It is a little bit more expensive. I don't know exactly how much, maybe $50 more, but it's a good microphone. And also for live performances is good. And this is, somebody gave this to me, otherwise I wouldn't probably bought it, but this is an AKG D40, even cheaper. This is about $80, all right? This is same concept. It is pretty good with cabinets. I like to mix it with the 57 sometimes. And now talking about the condensers. Now this is a strange one. Look at this. All right? The reason I'm moving around because I have the phone right in front of my screen. But yes, this is it. And there's many, of course. This is the King B or something. It's a condenser microphone, so it has a large diaphragm. Diaphragm is the membrane that moves when you put sound pressure to it, so your voice or your cabinet. And these tend to be a bit more delicate, but if you want one for recording guitars, there's plenty of them that you can use for this. And this is good for vocals, it's good for everything, for acoustic guitar, and it looks like a lighthouse. Yeah, it looks weird, right? But it sounds really good, and I bought it for nothing. I don't know why. It was worth hundreds of dollars, and I bought it for like 100. I don't know why or when it happened, I don't remember, but I just went out and bought it. It's a cool microphone, but really any condenser mic, they go from really cheap, like the Behringers and the Rode are pretty cheap and very well, you know, they're pretty popular. There's very expensive one like the Neumanns. Neumanns, most of them are very expensive, extremely good for vocals. For cabinets, there's a classic condenser. Well, there's a few, but one great combination is the 57 with the 421, the Sennheiser. Now, I don't know how far you want to go with guitars. If you are interested in guitar microphones, let me know, because I've used quite a few. And by the way, another great one is the Royer, right? Royers for guitars, also extremely important. But if you're in a small room, again, we're talking about home studio, I would just get one that you can use. If you are a singer, a condenser microphone is probably a better choice. If you are an instrumentalist and you just want to record a bunch of stuff, it's really hard to beat the Shure 57. All right? Okay, I'll accept all questions about microphones, but moving on, because I think microphones are not a huge part of a home studio. And we get to cabinets and DI and simulators, because that's how most of us will record. Now, there's different levels, of course, of all this. If you use cabinets, right, like these, you will need a microphone. So you will need any of these microphones or a combination of them to place in front of your cabinet, and you'll need volume, because it doesn't matter how quiet an amp is, it's always too loud to record at home. Tube amps, for example, they don't even start moving, you know, until you hit them pretty hard, and the cabinets don't move, you know, the speakers. So if you have that choice, great, a cabinet. You don't need 4x12. These are for live use, and I also use them in the studio. You can do with smaller ones. And oh wait, there's a question. Ray, how do you recommend you position a microphone so it sounds better than the amp emulation? Well, anyway, I mean, the JVM 2000 emulation is not great, but I would use a microphone. Okay, let me get to it. Let's go back to microphones just for 1 second. So now this is a bit beyond the scope of today, but this is my speaker, right? So you have the center of the speaker and the cone around it. So let's just focus on the center. There you go. I'm gonna put it like this, right? This is my center of the speaker. Rule number one is place the microphone, especially if you're working in an environment that's not a huge room, a great sounding live room. You know, if you're not at Abbey Road, you're in your home, your living room or your bedroom. You want the microphone close to the cone. How close? The easiest way is to leave the grill cloth on, so you see those are all covered, and stick it right on the cover, and maybe 1 centimeter off, just so that it doesn't rub against it. And that's a good distance. Now, looking at the speaker, the easiest way to place a microphone is right in front of the center of the speaker, when you see the little dome. So start there. So put the microphone right like this, straight up to the cone. All right? Now, this will sound the brightest and the most present. And depending on the amp, and the JCM 2000 is an example, and the speaker, and the microphone, this might be too much. It might be too bright, too present, too strong. And so there's things we can do. One of them, which I like to do, is to just move it up, or to the side or down, but move it a little bit so that it's not right at the center of the cone. It's pointing just a little bit out. So if this is the center, instead of having it there, I might have it there. Okay? Or there, it doesn't matter. And one good spot is where the dome joins the bigger cone. You'll see it. Through grill cloth, all you need to do is get a flashlight. I always have one. Okay, no batteries. But you can see through the grill cloth with the flashlight, and then just place the microphone. All right, another way to do it is leave it where it is, in front of the dome, the center of the speaker, and just tilt it. Okay, and you can tilt it outwards, but that's not really how it's done. Usually you move it up and you directed to the center, like that, okay? And this also has a darker sound, a bit more mellow, which sometimes is what you want, and sometimes is what you don't want. But definitely the simulations that are built into the amps, they're not that great, okay? So that's what I would do. All right, so cabinets, DIs, and simulators. So if we do cabinets, that's what you do. If we do DI means you go into your sound card and then you use something, right? You could actually just record it direct, but usually you'll have an amp simulator, a plugin, a software, something, Amplitude, I don't know, guitar rig, that kind of stuff. And I use not much of this, of DI. I use it with the bass, of course. The bass always goes DI plus an amp. But I use the Universal Audio plugins for guitar. I have a couple. I have the Fender and maybe a couple of Marshalls, and they're great. And I know there's Brainworks makes quite a few of them. Softtube makes them. And then, of course, you have all the variety of Amplitude and all that stuff. And some of these, like Amplitude, they come with their own interface, which sometimes they're a great deal. And I think Amplitude just came out with a version 5, which I think people are saying is great compared to the previous ones. So that's one thing. And then you have the simulators. And simulators, I would say, are like the Kemper and the Helix and the Fractal, even my Rockmans, you know, they're simulators. They're not real amps, and usually they have a line output that simulates the sound of a mic'd amp. So, for example, the Rockmans are pretty crude, right? And the Kemper is very sophisticated. And so that's your whole range there. And if you do that, then you have a level that's line level. You just plug it into your interface and you're set to go. You know, it's all simulated in here. Like, for example, the Kemper even simulates the microphone and the preamp. It's all part of the package. I'm sure the XFX does the same thing, and the Helix. So it's a cool option. And as a matter of fact, even though I enjoy and really love my Marshalls and my amps, if I had to maybe give one suggestion to people who ask, depending on their budget and their level, I would say get one of these, because then you get all kinds of sounds, and maybe they're not 100% as beautiful, but they are maybe 90% as beautiful, and a lot easier, a lot cheaper, and a lot easier to maintain. You don't have to, you know, the transformers don't blow up, and the tubes don't blow up, and the capacitor don't blow up inside your speakers, and the fuses don't blow up, and so on. So certainly one of those. But again, I would probably invest in a good one. I've been using the Kemper for a long time to you know, sometimes the amps are not enough, and it's great. But you know, there's a lot of great stuff now. But you know, really get the good stuff, because you'll be playing guitar a long time, and you don't want to be suffering with shitty distortion and harsh highs and, you know, flabby lows. You know what I mean? So I would get one of the good ones. And the other option actually that I use a lot is a cabinet simulator. And you guys know that I've been using the Universal Audio aux for a long time. Basically what you do is you take the speaker output of your cabinets, of your amplifier, so the heads or the amp part of a combo, unplug the speaker, run it to the Universal Audio aux or to the Boss one. Boss has one. There's all kinds of brands for it. And then from there, the box will simulate the next stage, so the microphone and the cabinets. I've been using the Palmer speaker simulator for a long time. I had an SPL transducer, which I got rid of eventually. It sounded great, but you know, I just had too many. I didn't need all those simulators, but it's a superior one, certainly, as far as. But the Palmer for me was sentimental, because a sentimental value, because I use it on so many records. And now I'm using the aux all the time. When I'm not using real cabinets, I'm using the aux. And the aux simulates different microphones, different cabinets, different speakers within those cabinets, and it sounds great. And the room, you know, it sounds really, really good. So that's one option. It's expensive, but if you have maybe 2 or 3 amplifiers you really like, and you can't turn them up because you're at home and you're gonna wake up your family and your neighbors, you don't want to give up those amps, then a good speaker simulator is a great option. Okay, so that's something I would certainly look into if you could afford it. And for a long time I couldn't afford it, and I bought the Palmer, which is a very simple one. But nowadays there's so many great options, and I think the Boss one is cheaper and still very good. So, and the Torpedo, right? Torpedo has one. There's many of them. And so check them out. If you have more than 2 or 3 amps, I would say you can truly take advantage of them with something like that. All right, so let's move on. Of course, I'm always available for questions. My Cakewalk DAW allows the movement of the mic around the speaker. Yes, all right, so it has a simulation of it. And it's a free download, all right? So thanks, that is art. Okay, this is also gonna be quick. Outboard Gear. Outboard Gear is everything like preamps, compressors, everything that you use before you get to the sound card. You can do without all this, even if you have a good microphone. Most preamps nowadays on interfaces are great. I made a video a long time ago about preamps, and you know, it was a different time. Preamps didn't have, you know, usual sound cards and interfaces didn't have good preamps. Now I have a Neve clone, a 1073. I have a Universal Audio preamp, and I have an Outboard 1176 compressor because it's my favorite compressor and I use it with the cabinets. Otherwise, everything is, I use the preamps on my UAD sound cards on interfaces. So Outboard Gear, I would say just use something you really enjoy. If you have an analog delay, I have a Boss DM100 that I like to use. If you have some pedals that, you know, like the big Memory Man, not the big, well, the Memory Man Deluxe as well, but the choruses, you know, some reverbs, then by all means get it. If you have a multi-effect like a Yamaha SPX, you know, some people spend a lot of money on a Bricasti reverb because they really love it, so that might be worth your while. Nowadays there's some pedals like the Strymon pedals that are great quality, like rack quality, but in a pedal. So some people say, no, I really enjoy that. I don't want to use a plugin. I'm going to use that. So that's great. But I would limit my Outboard Gear if you're setting up in a small room and you don't want to spend a lot of money. I mean, my Universal Audio plugin of the 1176 sounds, to me, sounds almost undistinguishable from my hardware 1176. And it's, you know, I only have one and it costs 5 times what the plugin cost or more. And I can only use it once if I use the Outboard, but I can use as many as I want if I use the plugin. All right, so most plugin or the console. For example, one plugin I use all the time is the SSL console by Brainworks, and I use it for mixing. I have it all across my mix on every track. So if I were to buy that console, you know, it would cost me like, I don't know, $500,000. So no thanks. And then every month you spend that much in electricity bill. So, you know, be smart about it. If there's something you really enjoy, by all means, get it. Otherwise, you can just buy the plugin, all right? There is art. You say, I'm not a serious guitarist musician, so the digital stuff is all I use. You rather do all analog. Oh, yes. Yes, analog is great, but I just told you what happened with that thing, you know. Yeah, you really have to like it and use it. Otherwise, stay away from it. But yeah, analog is great, but digital has come so far, you know, in the last 10 years, so different. So interfaces, we're going to talk about interfaces and converters. Converters, I'm just going to say, get a good interface. This was more important a few years ago. Converters were crap. Converters is basically every time you plug something into the sound card and it goes to the computer, it goes from analog, right, what travels into your cable, to digital to be recorded, and then when you play it back, it goes from digital to analog. So those converters are extremely important. And when I started out, I had no idea what they were, and I just went with whatever sound card I had. And the first time I bought a good sound card, which was an RME, I couldn't believe the same file. I was playing back the same thing, and I couldn't believe the difference. And also when I got my UAD card. So we're going to talk about both things at once, right? So we're going to talk about interfaces. And you use a Scarlett Solo? All right, great. Yeah, those are great. And last couple of years, I've seen such great interfaces. I'm going to talk about 3 of them. Of course, this is not sponsored. You know, just something that I know of. And I'm sure there's many more, but 3 that piqued my interest for people who ask me about, you know, I want to build a small studio, what should I get? The first thing I suggest is check out the Universal Audio things. And you know, I'm really into it. The Universal Audio gear is, to me, is the best. But They have small interfaces now, which are relatively inexpensive. They're not cheap, but they're not as expensive as it used to be. You know, having a universal audio system was almost prohibitive before, and now it's a lot better. And you can get one with only 2 inputs, you know, and then as soon as you have that, you have this suite of plugins. And what they do is you plug a microphone, for example, into it, and if you have the plugin of a Neve preamp, the whole circuit of the actual sound card changes impedance and all that to make it as exact as possible. And that's been incredible for me, and I use it extensively with all my microphones and all that. And it's a bit on the higher end, but if you're serious about this, you probably can swing it. And then some of the plugins can be expensive, but you can wait for sales, you know, and all that, and it's not as bad. So that's my maybe number 1, depending on budget. And then there's also a great one, which is the newer Solid State Logic SSL, the guys that make that big console. They made 2 very inexpensive interfaces, and I heard one of them and it sounds great. For the price, it's about $200. It's great, sounds great. And it's only 2 inputs, of course, so make sure you only want to record 1 or 2 things at once, or maybe 1 instrument, or maybe you need, why would you need 2? Well, if you have 2 microphones on your cabinet, you will need 2 preamps for those 2 microphones. If you have 2 microphones on your acoustic guitar, or if you want to record a synth, then that's a stereo signal, so you'll need 2 inputs. Well, not all of them, but most of them are stereo, and you need it on your input for your interface. Also, if we were talking about outboard gear, if you want to patch things like reverb and so on, that's extra inputs. So make sure you have the right amount of inputs. Don't go for a 2 input interface just to save a couple of $100, because then you'll be out of inputs. Sometimes you can expand those inputs, because some interfaces have an optical or SPDIF, a digital input, so you can use external preamps and send them. But you know, that gets quite complicated. So make sure you have the right amount of preamps or inputs, okay? They're not the same thing. Sometimes you have 4 inputs, but only 2 of them have preamps. That's beyond today's video, the difference between line and mic and instrument level inputs, but we can get to it some other time. And the other one is the IK Multimedia XIO. And I haven't heard it, but on paper, you know, it sounds like a great option if you want to stay in the box. So if you don't want to use amplifiers, maybe you don't want to spend more than $1,000 or more actually, or $2,000 for a Kemper or an XFX or a Line 6, you can get the IK Multimedia XIO. It's a sound card. I think there's 2 of them, maybe bigger and smaller, but they're designed for guitar. So you plug in your guitar, and it has the right impedance, of course, and then software-wise, it comes, I think if you pay just a little more, it comes with the full Amplitude suite or something like that, like a ton of amplifiers and microphones. And I think the latest revision, it sounded great for what I saw. I just saw videos of it, but it did sound great. So, and that's about 300 or something like that, 350 or something like that, or maybe 400, I don't know. But it's, you know, it will be a one-stop solution for the guitar thing. And they have very decent preamps and very decent converters. So, you know, that's an option. If you want to spend a lot of money, I don't know, Pro Tools, Avid Pro Tools, they just come out with a new family of interfaces. I would go with the Universal Audio just because I know it. Doesn't mean it's better, but I do enjoy it, and I am comfortable within the ecosystem of Universal Audio. And RME, it's another good brand of higher level interfaces, you know. So if you have questions, I'll be happy to answer. But you know, those 3 suggestions I think are pretty good. Otherwise, the rules are just make sure you get enough inputs and outputs. That's the main thing. And also, some of them will come with a free DAW. Here it is. The DAW is a digital audio workstation, and what it is basically your Pro Tools, GarageBand, Logic, Cubase, Live, Reaper, Bitwig. I don't know. There's so many of them. And personally, I use Pro Tools, but that's because I'm lucky enough to, I can't go into the details, but I know Pro Tools can be very expensive, but it is a great option, and I really love it. I use it all the time. The other thing I really like, and I sound like a broken record, but Universal Audio just put out Luna, which is their own DAW, and it's free if you have a sound card. So that's why I was saying earlier, some of the universal audio sound cards, they look expensive, but now, for example, you don't have to go out and spend 100 to maybe 300 for a piece of software, which is like a DAW. And so that's something that is an option. And some sound cards, like the PreSonus, they come with maybe Studio One included, right? But there's different levels of each of these software. So suggestion-wise, it depends on what you do. Some people love Ableton Live if you're more into the electronic, kind of like an improvisational, compositional thing. I work more linearly. I work like if it was tape. So as a matter of fact, most of my records, I try to limit myself to 48 tracks, as if it were a big console, so I don't get lost in 100 guitar tracks. You know, it's a waste of time. But if you're beginning, I would probably suggest you see what's up with your sound card. If it gives you a free software, then you might use that. Otherwise, if you don't want to spend a lot of money, I heard great things about Reaper, which is about, I think it's free for a long time, for maybe a month or two, and then you can just spend $60 and that's it. And also, depending on the DAW you use, you have different formats for your plugins. So that's something you want to keep in mind. Usually it's no issue at all, but that's something you want to keep in mind. Like Pro Tools only uses AAX, which is specific to Pro Tools, and others more use VST. Some of the, Logic and all that, they use AU. You just want to get familiar with that. And Universal Audio uses their own. So, DAWs are great. And working out of the box, analog, like Darizar was saying, is it can get pretty convoluted and expensive. So I think DAWs are a great place to start. And Darizar says that I use Cakewalk because I bought guitar tracks too a long time ago and it has always worked. Yes, well, Cubase, Cakewalk, there's so many of them and they work great. Whatever you find that works for you. Kike, what's up? I use Reaper. I like it. It's not free, but you can use it and pay later. Yes, so I heard great things about Reaper. And like you can configure it to remind you of software you're used to, like more on the freer side or more on the traditional Pro Tools side. And yeah, so that's one thing you need. And here's one thing you don't need, which is control surfaces. I do use them, but that's certainly something you don't need right now. And I don't know if you like the feel of the faders, and depending on what software you use, I've seen people buy these the control surfaces and they spend more money than they could spend on a great interface. And so that's why I'm saying I wouldn't spend a lot of money on these yet until you have a budget and maybe you're making money from your studio and you're using it a lot. So the ergonomics for me, for mixing, I have an 8 fader bank and I use them because I can mix drums, with my mouse going 2 dBs, 1 dB. Then by the time I reach the hi-hat, I forgot what I did on the snare. So I want to have my buses. I move my buses at once. Otherwise, for the beginning, you certainly don't need it, and most people write automation with the mouse anyway. Indrajit says, I use Reaper only because the one which I got with my Behringer called Traction was shit. Yes, well, I don't think, really? Did Behringer has a DAW? Okay, well, no, I don't think it's a good idea. What is a control surface? A control surface is something you plug into your computer, sometimes with USB, sometimes with Ethernet. And what it is basically faders or transport. So I have a transport console where I go play, record, kind of like a keypad, but it's specific to that. And then you have faders for volume. They usually have a mute and solo button. They have a pan pot to place left and right. And then usually you can control your plugins from it, the sends, how much delay you send somewhere, or the opposite, how much you send a track to a delay or a reverb. And they're comfortable. I mean, they're really nice. I've thought about actually expanding my control surface, but also the other thing is if they're tied to a certain software, then they might become obsolete or tie you to the software. So that's why I'm saying you should wait. When you know that you're going to stay with Pro Tools, or I'm going to stay with Luna, or I'm going to stay with Cubase, then it's a lot easier to go, okay, now I'm going to spend the money on a big control surface. But until then, maybe you could get just like the PreSonus one. It's one fader. So you can select the track and use the fader to write automation, so it's not like dots on a MIDI track. Now, the next and final one is important, is monitors, monitors and headphones. And this is extremely important. So where I would spend money is monitors. Or if you can't afford, not money-wise, if you can't afford space-wise, you know, the room and so on, I would get a good pair of headphones. Can you mix with headphones? I don't know. I've done things with headphones, and but to me, mixing is done on speakers. But it is true that some people can do it on headphones. So I would say get good stuff. Get good headphones. I use Sennheiser HD600. There are many. There's DT77 Pro. There's many brands, but you know, they don't have to be extremely expensive. But you should probably not buy the cheapest headphone you can buy. As far as speakers go, you know, I've gone through all of them. I started with very cheap ones, then some medium ones, and now I have some very nice Neumanns. And I do hear a big difference. But you know, I use them professionally, and I can justify the expense because I also do recording courses. I do my records, but they're expensive. And sometimes I'm thinking, if you buy very expensive speakers, when you know what you're doing, then you don't need my advice. And if you need my advice, maybe, you know, you should be careful when spending a lot of money. I'm talking thousands, you know, on speakers. And it has so much to do with the room, with the kind of music you make, with how much experience you have with previous speakers and what you didn't like about those speakers. You know, it gets out of hand pretty quick. But brands that I know are good, the Atom ones, now they have some cheaper ones which are good. The Rockets are classics, the KRK, a lot of people use them. These are the cheaper ones. A lot of brands now are going down to that level of price. Even Neumanns, they have a smaller set, and also Genelec, they have some, I think, was it Genelec or I'm blacking out now. I'm blanking out. Okay, well, I get back to you on that. It's a classic one, come on. I even A-B'd them with my Neumanns, and now I'm anyway. And then there's a higher level, and then there's like extremely expensive level. You don't have to get there. But if you want to get really, really great ones, not extremely, you know, I'm not talking about big studios, but real pro sounding ones, maybe keep in mind 2,000-3,000. And that's hard to swallow if it's just a hobby, and I don't think it's wise. Okay, but if you can make money from it, and you can monetize it, and if you can justify it, then yes. Otherwise, I would probably spend more on headphones if you're starting out than on speakers. I use 100-ish edifier monitors, and they're great for my level, and my headphones are great, about 150. Audio-Technica, yeah, the Audio-Technicas are great. The thing is, a lot of stuff that has to do with monitors, you have to know them. And to know them, you have to have a room that allows you to know them. So that's a big thing. It's a snake that bites its own tail. That's why my first chapter and section was on the room. And so we'll leave this a bit in the air, the monitor thing, but I'll be more than happy to help you out during our weekly sessions. If you guys are getting into this stuff, feel free to anytime. It doesn't matter what the topic is. You can just ask me questions, and I'll be happy to answer. All right? Oh, by the way, I forgot. There's a little surprise. Not yet, but a lot of you have been asking if I have material like books and methods, and I've started work on one. So I've started work on my first book. There's going to be a lot of them, each one on a topic, and I hope to have the alternate picking book out pretty soon. I don't know how soon, but you know, I have to finish it, review all of it. It's a pain in the ass to put it all into my software thing to edit it, and it's so hard to align everything, and then I have to record the audio for it. But hopefully it's not going to be a long time before the first one arrives, and then I'll make more, and it should be pretty cool. I think it will be very useful and a good complement to the stuff we're doing, because sometimes we do technique and it ends there. So now you'll be able to have that the material to keep working on it, and then can come back here and talk about it a bit more. So hopefully I'll have some news on that in a few weeks. All right, so I think we're done. It's been an hour already, so I hope it was interesting and maybe even a bit useful if you were looking at stuff. And yeah, so if you have any questions, I'll hang around for a couple of minutes, and otherwise I'll let you go back to your weekend I'm sure you have more serious stuff to take care of. But again, thanks for being here, everybody. And if you're new, welcome. And please do use the chat. Don't be shy. I can hear them well from any room in the house. Well enough, so that's good enough for my level. All right, yeah. Cool. Well, sometimes if you want a bit of advice, if you're listening to your mixes and you want to get a fresh perspective, leave the room, leave the door a bit open, leave it a bit ajar, and go to the I don't know, wherever the door goes to. Maybe it's a walkway or another room, and go into the other room and listen to it. You'll be able to catch a lot of things that you can't catch right in front of the speakers, like the hi-hat is too high, or man, there's a lot of reverb on the voice, or the kick drum is gone, or it's too high. That will help. So leave the door a bit open, go to the other room, and it's great advice if you are mixing. And if that way you'll learn about monitors and all that just by seeing the different responses in different places. All right. So I'm not seeing any questions. I want to thank all of you again, and thank you for the support. I've been getting your donations at the PayPal address. By the way, if you feel like it, there's an address down here for PayPal, but you don't have to, of course. And yeah, is there anything you want me to do next time? Hello, Girasol. Hello. You have a good weekend too. Yeah, of course. And Jim, thanks, Andre. Interesting. Great. Thanks. Glad to hear that. And what was I saying? Yeah, if you have any ideas for next week, please let me know, because what is this? Today is number 23. And we go deep with these videos, so, maybe I should break them up in shorter videos and I'll have more material every week. So please do help me out. Give me some advice on topics for next week and the following ones. Use the comments. Again, please subscribe, hit the bell, all the good stuff. But also maybe you could spread the word about this to your guitar player friends or musicians friends. And we can be more here and hang out and talk, all right? What I really like to do is listen to my recordings now on expensive speakers to see how effective my recordings are. Yes, well, go to a music store, tell them you want to try speakers, and use that as your reference. It might work for a couple of passes, See ya, Guru, okay? See you, Indrajit. Thanks. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one. I'll see you next week. Okay. Bye-bye.